For years, Tampa, Florida has always been one of the top choices for people looking for somewhere to relocate, and for good reason. We've got year-round sunshine, world-class beaches, a laid-back lifestyle, and a ridiculous amount of outdoor activities. However, before you decide on packing your things and moving to Tampa, let me warn you, Tampa is not for everyone. And in today's video, I'll give you the 10 reasons why it might not be for you, and I'll share why those things didn't stop us from making the move. And if we've never met before, my name is Juan Alcala, and 6 years ago, my wife Kate and I sold almost everything we owned, packed up our family of 5, and moved 1,200 miles south here to the greater Tampa Bay area, and have been loving it ever since. We've also helped over 100 other families do the same. So if you're considering making that move, don't hesitate to reach out. There's a link to my calendar down below where we can jump on a Zoom call and get you started on the process. All right, now my guess is you've probably been watching a lot of videos like this, and you're going to hear some things today that you may have heard on those other videos, but my goal today is to explain why we didn't let these things stop us and why you may not want to let it stop you. However, I just want to make sure that we're clear with each other. This is not for everybody, and I understand that. Some people absolutely love where they live and they have to relocate for work, and maybe that's you. Other people are making lifestyle decisions and choosing to move, and that was us, honestly. And if that resonates with you, I think this video is gonna serve you well. But I also believe that there's a lot of value in what I'm going to share in terms of if you have to relocate as well. So I just wanted to be as transparent as I can with this because, again, I don't believe it's for everybody, and that's not my goal today. My goal is to help you understand the exchanges, the trade-offs, if you will, because there's pros and cons everywhere you live. It doesn't matter what area you're from. I've been to beautiful places all over this country, and I'm telling you right now, some areas have some of the most incredible natural resources and wildlife. I'm from Michigan originally, and we have incredible summers, and the Upper Peninsula and up north of Michigan is some of the most beautiful areas in the country. Lake Michigan is unbelievable. Torch Lake, it's like the Bahamas. It's crazy to think all of the natural resources, but it came along with a lot of gray days, a lot of inclement weather, a lot of cold weather, and that just wasn't for us. So when we get into this today, I just want to share where my heart is coming from, why you may find value in this video. And if you do, don't hesitate to hit that like button. It really does help push this out to other people who may be interested in making that move also and just haven't made that decision yet. So that first kind of con, if you will, that I want to get into is the intense heat and humidity. And what I want to say is this, weather patterns change, and depending on whether we're in a La Nina or an El Nino, there's all kinds of variances, and I'm not a weatherman. I don't play one on TV, and here in Tampa Bay, we love Mr. Dennis Phillips. That is our go-to guy. Dennis is just a wonderful weather person who is a level head about all things Tampa, and I'm a huge fan of his. So if you haven't been following him, check him out on Facebook or Instagram. He's incredible. But one of the things I want to share with you guys is this idea of intense heat and humidity, right? And I've heard people use the word oppressive. I felt that way at times, and I want to share my experience over 6 years. The first year we got here, we came out of cold, dreary weather. We arrived on December 2nd of 2018. We just celebrated our 6th anniversary here. And basically, we weren't going to let anything ruin our winter. And Florida during the winter, as you may or may not know, is just absolutely incredible. When we got here in December, it was probably an 80 or 81 degree day. It was awesome. It was a little bit muggy actually, which was really kind of out of character for this time of year. And as I'm speaking right now, it's 60 degrees today, and it was 42 this morning. So, again, that's a little bit out of the ordinary, but it was warm. The very next day it cooled down, and it was, that ideal winter, weather. And for some people, they want it 85 degrees every single day. Other people, if you live here on a regular basis, you're not always going to want the weather to be hot, okay? And hot is subjective. This is the challenge that a lot of people face. It's like salsa. When you ask people if they think salsa is spicy, some people will say yes, other people say it's not spicy enough. Is medium salsa spicy to you? And I'm bringing this up, I'm using this analogy because what is hot? Is 85 degrees hot? Is 80 degrees hot? Is 75 hot? Those are things that you have to figure out on your own before you consider making a move like this, because When we start talking about June, July, August, September, and October, you're going to be experiencing temperatures that average over 85 degrees every single day. And that is not for everyone. And during our wet season, our rainy season, if you will, which is really July, August, September, it's really hot and really humid. It can be, 90 degrees plus every single day. And unlike a lot of northern areas or places in the Midwest, we really don't get a nightly cool down. And that's something that you really need to be aware of. The temperatures in those months that I just referred to, you're talking about 80-degree temps at night in the middle of the night. So it doesn't really cool down. So that's something to keep in mind. The humidity obviously is also something that people have to deal with. And if you're not used to that, that's the thing that can feel oppressive, right? Like, I walk every single day during the summer. I just make sure that I wear a hat and I cover as much of my skin as I possibly can without getting sunburned and not having too much exposure. But I like it. I like being out there, and it is definitely worth the exchange that we made. Y'all, we had 6 to 7 months of gray, dreary, cold, just terrible weather. Now, that may not be your experience, but for those of you who are used to similar climates, I'm telling you right now, having to change twice a day because you sweat through clothes versus having to bundle up, shovel off cars, shovel your driveway, y'all, getting gas outside in the winter can be painful. Like, it is something that until you experience it and you're fed up with it, you don't know. And I'm sharing with you why you may be willing to make that exchange, but it's not for everybody. There are people who come here, experience it, and decide it's not for them, and then they make what the locals call halfback moves, or I've heard Floridians, people who move from the north to Florida that move to the Carolinas, they call them halfbacks. Pretty funny term when you think about it, but that's why. So just make sure that you're thinking through that. Is this the right move for you? Is this best for your family? Those are decisions that you have to make. But again, weather, 265 plus days of sunshine, 4 to 5 months of incredible weather. I'm not talking about good weather. I'm talking about incredible weather. 2 months of pretty good weather in terms of, my personal opinion. And then we have, 6-7 months of hot. So just keep that in mind before you make the move. And number 2, we're just gonna keep the weather theme going, because what we didn't talk about there was our intense thunderstorms and our hurricanes, right? We are a subtropical climate. We're in the Gulf of Mexico. We live on a peninsula in the ocean, okay? And here in Tampa Bay, if you live near the coast, like where I live, I'm right by Indian Rocks Beach, but I'm on a peninsula in the ocean, and that exposes you to a lot of risk, and that is not for everyone. And here's what I'll say to you. This is coming from experience, and I've shared this on this channel. I'm sharing my journey right now with our hurricane season here. Our home was flooded from Hurricane Milton, and it's very interesting because my house is 43 feet above sea level, which means that we didn't receive storm surge, so that wasn't a concern of mine. But we got over 12 inches of rain in about a 6-hour period, and our home just so happens to be the lowest point of our subdivision. And even though it hasn't flooded in 47 years, this was the year. And those risks are real. And we're right in the middle of rehabbing our home. I'm currently living in an RV in my front yard with my family of 5 and our dog. And we're having our home, renovated and rebuilt here. Now, we consider ourselves pretty fortunate. We had only a couple inches of water, which basically tore up our floor. We lost some furniture, but we weren't nearly as damaged as some of these homes here on our coastal areas. I mean, I've shared videos about neighborhoods like Shore Acres and St. Petersburg and obviously Indian Rocks Beach and all of our coastal communities, which were heavily impacted by the last 2 hurricanes. I mean, Hurricane Helene was 100 miles off the coast and sent 4-foot storm surge into the Tampa Bay area. And we were very fortunate with Milton in the respect of we didn't get storm surge like that again. Actually, we had negative. Sarasota was the area that got hit with the storm surge. But the reality is this is a part of living here in the state of Florida. It's not even Tampa Bay, it's the state of Florida. If you're gonna live anywhere near the coastline, especially in the Gulf of Mexico, you are at higher risk for potential hurricane threat and hurricane damage. So what I would recommend is, if you're not a beach baby, and I use that term as I need to live by the water, because that was our requirement. For us to move here, we wanted to be within 15 minutes of the Gulf of Mexico, be able to go check out a sunset every day, go down to the beach, in the middle of the day, not be, making an event where we had to go to, pack up the car and it was an hour-long trip. But for other people, that is not what they're trying to accomplish. And the beach is not the most important thing. And if that's true to you, there are areas that are much safer in terms of risk factor to get you away from potential storm damage. Now, again, hurricanes are an act of God. They will go wherever they want to go, and all you can do is try to mitigate these risks. But we've moved a lot of people to areas like Wesley Chapel and Parrish and Land O'Lakes and Odessa and these suburbs away from the coast, and they've experienced little to no wind damage, from these storms or rains. Again, it can happen anywhere, but you're trying your best to mitigate the issues. And I'm just sharing with you why. Now, why would we decide to take that risk? Y'all, we knew what we were moving into. When we did all our homework, Tampa had not experienced a direct impact from a hurricane in 105 years. Now, that's not to say that there weren't times when these storms affected Tampa. Again, I just shared with you, Hurricane Helene was 100 miles off the coast and still damaged our coastal real estate. However, Tampa's been very fortunate during that period of time. So we understood the risk and we made the move. And unfortunately, we have, in 6 years, we already had to deal with the worst of it. Now, the great news is I've spoke to my clients, and out of all the people we've helped move here, none of them called us and told us that their homes were flooded. Not a single one of them shared that news with us. So that is a huge win. So you can do it. Our experience is the unfortunate one. Let us wear that scar, if you will, and hopefully share that lesson with you. And since we talked about flooding during hurricanes, I want to get a little bit deeper on this topic specifically, okay? So if you're going to move to the area and you don't need or want to live on the coast, all right, my recommendation to you is that you look for areas that are in a non-flood zone and a non-hurricane evacuation zone. Those areas will put you in the best possible situation for not having to experience flooding. Now, just because you have those two things does not mean that you won't flood or can't flood, right? If you're near rivers that have the ability to crest and overflow, that's something to keep an eye on. Older communities that may not have had the same level of attention when they were built in terms of risk for runoff and those types of things versus new developments, which are heavily focused on watershed and those types of things. And I know we're in the weeds a little bit on this, but this is super important. Non-flood, non-evacuation zones. Those are a really good place to start. They typically do not require flood insurance. And they're also some of the lowest insurance premiums that you will find. So what you're looking for, if you're looking on Redfin or Realtor or any of the real estate websites like ours, you want to see flood zone X. That's what you're looking for. If you see flood zone X, that means you're not required to have a flood insurance policy on there. Now, having said that, could you or should you still carry one? Talking to someone who wasn't required to carry it and now has to pay for the entire rehabilitation of his home, I would strongly encourage you to look into it, especially if it's not required. It's usually very inexpensive as an add-on to your policy to give you that extra layer of protection. Okay, so now we get on to the seasonal crowds and tourists. Now, this is not going to be something that's for everyone. If you're a person who likes to be left alone and unbothered by anybody who wants to come visit your area, then moving anywhere near the coastline, that's probably not going to be for you because we got to share, y'all. I'm here to let you know, we're just over a mile away from the Gulf beaches here, and we're coming into season, and season really starts at the end of November after Thanksgiving, but gets hot and heavy after the Christmas and New Year holiday. That first week of January, it basically explodes here. The traffic is already starting to pick up, and we're only in the first week of December. So that is something we have to deal with. Last year, the greater Tampa Bay area had over 16.5 million visitors, and that is both a blessing and a challenge. Well, what's the blessing? The blessing is they bring in about $4.5 billion to our local economy. That is awesome. What is the challenge? They also drive. They rent, right? Airbnbs, they're in hotels. and they drive all over the place, right? They're renting cars. People come here and spend the winters, right? Canadians have been coming here for generations. People up north have winter homes here, and our population just basically balloons, and getting around on a day-to-day basis can be a challenge. And the snowbirds, and that's what they're called when they flock down from up north every single year, they tend to bring some interesting driving habits with them. They may not be used to how long the lights take here, and people can start to get aggressive, and they don't understand that we can do U-turns, and it just gets really, really wacky. So keep that in mind. Now, are there little pockets, honey holes, if you will, that you can get away from all the craziness? Yeah, absolutely. The beach that I go to, Indian Rocks Beach, we don't get anywhere near as busy as Clearwater or St. Pete. It's part of the reason why we chose it. Does it still get busy? Absolutely. Do we have to share that with people? Yes, that it is a natural resource. It's not mine, doesn't belong to me, I didn't create it, and I know I'm gonna have to share it, and that is okay. We get to do that. It's a blessing that we live here every day. When everybody else goes home after Easter, we get it basically all to ourselves again. So it's part of the exchange. It's not for everybody. Why did we, make that move knowing that it was gonna get crazy here, that the Publix grocery stores were gonna get super busy and Costco was gonna get busy? Well, we traded it because we have over 265 days of sunshine. We can go get a tan in the winter if we want. We can have the warm sun, shining on our face even during the cold winter months, and it's still 65 or 70 degrees here. Those were worth the rub. And again, if being around the crowds isn't for you, there's ways to get around that. So if you got questions about that specifically, don't hesitate to reach out to me. I'm happy to share those things with you. Put comments down below too if you got questions there. Now, the number 5 reason why you may not want to call Tampa home is the cost of living is continuing to rise. Now, I'm going to be transparent with you. When we made this move, y'all, it was inexpensive to move to Tampa. Now, I still have my opinions about this, and I'm going to share it, but Tampa was way under the radar. We got a 4-bedroom, 2-bath, 2,000 square foot home just over a mile away from the water for like $380,000, which you couldn't get anywhere near a lake in Michigan for a property similar to that for less than $600,000 or $700,000 at the time, and you could easily spend $1 million, and that was not our cup of tea for something that we were only going to be able to use for 18 weeks out of the year. Didn't make any sense. And for us, we wanted a higher quality of living for us personally, and for that meant that we wanted to be around the sun, we wanted to be around the coast, we wanted to be around the Gulf, and that was really a focus for us. But what I wanted to share with that is the cost of living, as you are probably well aware, has exploded all over the country, and Tampa is no different. And over the last 5 years, people have really found out about the area and continue to put a lot of pressure on home values here, and they have gone up 66% since 2020, which is a dramatic increase. And the other thing that has happened here is Tampa, but Florida in general, has attracted more income earners earning at least $200,000 a year than anywhere else in the country. And as you can probably imagine, that puts a lot of pressure on locals. If you were in an area where they were paying $40,000 or $50,000 a year on average, you had record inflation, and then on top of that, you've got a bunch of people moving in that are bringing in high incomes. It becomes very hard to compete. So I just want to share that with you. Now, at the time of this recording, the median single-family home in the city of Tampa is coming in at $499,000 versus the U.S. at $452,000. So as you can see, that has really changed, and I've watched this happen in real time. Florida in general used to be considered the land of milk and honey for very little money, right? We've got no state income tax, which is a huge benefit for retirees bringing a pension. That's why that's happened for generations. But along with these rising home prices, we've had more and more insurance challenges. We've had HOAs and assessments to like condo buildings that have put large burdens on condo and townhome owners to to bring their properties up to today's standards. And it's a challenge, you know, especially for the condo townhouse market. That's a whole different animal we'll tackle in a different video, but just be aware, okay? If you're considering a condo or townhome anywhere in the state of Florida, be mindful. You want to make sure that their 40-year survey and assessment has been completed, that their assessments have been paid for before you ever go walking into a property like that. And then on the single family home side, just be mindful again of insurance, taxes, those types of things. It just really depends on what area you're going to live in. That's something to be mindful of. Again, no state income tax. That's awesome. It does help keep cost of living lower. Our groceries were more expensive when we made the move. We've done a whole entire cost of living video on this before. I'm going to do a new one here in the next coming weeks where we're going to share our budget again. I always share that annually, and I think that that's something that is very helpful. You know, our energy prices here tend to be more expensive than they were up north to us, but I've heard other people say it's cheaper, so that's really going to depending on where you're moving from. One of the great tools I love to use, and I talk about it in this channel all the time, is the Forbes cost of living calculator. That'll allow you to put in your salary. And then what it'll allow you to do is, say you're going to move to Tampa, you can type in Tampa and it'll show you how your money spends. It's awesome. It's a great tool. I highly encourage you to check that out. Another thing that might take some getting used to or might not be for you is the limited seasons we have. Y'all, we have one color year round, and that is green. That's really what it boils down to. And you know, if you're from, you know, different areas where maybe you're used to seasonal change, it is weird. It's kind of hard to get used to. When we first moved here, again, it was December. We were excited. We just wanted to get out of the cold, dreary weather. We'd already experienced 2 months of that back home, and we were looking forward to spending the entire winter, you know, at either the pool, at our pool, or at the ocean. That's really what we were trying to accomplish. And so it didn't matter to us. But I will say this: we came down right during the holiday season, and it was weird seeing Christmas lights and not having cold, chilly air, or not being surrounded by, it was just strange to me. Now, if you're used to that, it's going to be normal to you, but it doesn't really change. And I remember the first year we were there, we got this beautiful laurel oak tree in our front yard. It's huge, massive. And, it was shedding leaves. They were brown falling off, but it had green leaves coming in at the same time. And it was just one of those things that when you're used to seeing all of the leaves fall off the trees every year and going through a fall, or having a season in the spring where all of the brown comes back to life and turns green, it's an adjustment. And we do have seasons here. We still have a spring, and you know, flowers and things, they bloom and do what they normally do. But it's just different flowers, because we always have some flowers, or you know, some greenery. Like, it's always hanging around, and it can just be kind of strange if you're not used to it, and it's not for everyone. What we decided, how we were going to fix some of those challenges, because it didn't really bother us on year one, like we said. Year two, we hosted our first Christmas. Everybody got to swim. Nobody really cared, but it was still kind of weird for us. But by year three, I was really looking for a seasonal change. I've always loved fall, and I'm going to use this term loosely because fall in Michigan was really like 2 days and then it was just miserable. But I really love seeing the color change, and for me personally, it was a hard adjustment to not have that. But we've found ways to work through that. We typically will go to the Georgia mountains during the fall, or the Western Carolinas. We love that, and that is some of the most beautiful country. Go up there in the Appalachian Mountain Range, and man, you want to talk about color changes. Oh my word, dude, it is gorgeous. So that's a way to kind of solve that problem, because now I can just go away for a weekend, right? Get my fix and come home, and then I'm back to the weather that I love, because I don't want to be cold anymore, y'all. It's cool to go and sit by a fire or have a campfire and kind of do that thing, but it's way more fun when you get to go to it and not have to be stuck in cold. And I had a friend of mine ask me, he's like, Juan, what is the biggest difference of living in Florida versus living in Michigan? And I said, number one thing is you do not have to shovel sunshine. The second thing is if I want snow, man, like, I get it. People are like, oh, I love the snow. But where we were, you know, it would snow 2 or 3 times a winter where it was pretty. And then outside of that, it was just a pain in the butt. And what ends up happening is it's only pretty in the morning before everybody gets on the road. And then it turns into a salty, sloppy, wet mess. There's car parts all over the side of the road from people crashing into each other. Come springtime, the spring flowers, now car parts. It just doesn't make any sense, and it just isn't worth it. So why be stuck in that? Our decision was, if we want to go and see the snow, we'll take a trip. Right? Snow is something you should go to, not be stuck in. And listen, I know what I'm saying is not everybody's path, but I told you I'd share how we overcome some of these things. So if you're someone who absolutely has to have seasonality, Florida has basically one season. So just keep that in mind. If you're someone who knows that they could probably work through that, then again, you can go to things. That's a great way to fix it. And for other people, they could care less. They're like, this is my weather. This is where I want to be. I love having only one season, which is green, palm trees, flowers. It's my thing. All right, number 7 is insects and wildlife. Now, I heard this for years before we moved down here. Florida is full of mosquitoes and panthers and snakes and alligators and everything that basically can take you off this planet. And while all of that, by the way, is true, here's what I will say. Depending on where you live, those things are going to impact your life more. If you're gonna go live in the Everglades, you're gonna be faced with some creatures that you may have not been ready for or accustomed to. So just keep that in mind. If you're gonna live in highly densely populated areas like Pinellas County, where I live, St. Pete, Clearwater area, Tampa, you're not gonna see as much of this. So keep that in mind. I have never seen a Florida panther running through our neighborhood. I have seen a coyote, but I see coyotes when I lived in Michigan, so that wasn't abnormal. I have never seen an alligator walk through my neighborhood. However, if I go to our local wildlife preserve, there are alligators there. They were here before us, they will be here after us. That is the way that this works, y'all. So we see alligators, we expect to see them. If you're out on the golf course and it's full of swampy, marshy areas and it has, little ponds and wildlife refuge, you're going to see those animals out there, right? You're gonna see alligators, you're gonna see turtles, you're probably gonna see snakes. That's part of living here. If you're gonna live in a swamp, you're also gonna be dealing with more, mosquitoes and insects in general. So just keep that in mind. Again, more urban, more densely populated, less of that type of thing. Where I live, I actually have less mosquitoes. We don't deal with hardly any mosquitoes where we live. Do they come out in the middle of the summer, in the middle of the night? Yes, but they were worse when we lived in Michigan. So it's different for everybody. Keep that in mind. If you're coming from the West Coast or arid, dry area, you're probably going to face more of that than you definitely did at home. I mean, I remember being in San Diego and I didn't see a bug for like 2 weeks. I know they're out there, but it was just strange to me. So that's different. But there, we have other bugs like no-see-ums, and those are the real ones that you got to watch out for. You literally can't see those little buggers, and they bite hard too. That's something you got to be aware of. The cockroaches. They gave our cockroaches here a cute little name. They call them palmetto bugs, and the reason they do that is because they live and nest in palmetto trees. But listen, man, it's a cockroach, and these things get like this big, and they fly. And trust me, it's happened to me. A very interesting experience, and you just got to be aware of these types of things. We have lizards that run around everywhere, and the further south you move in Florida, the larger the lizards get. Here where we are in Tampa, we don't have iguanas, but just about an hour and a half, 2 hours south of us, all of a sudden iguanas start, they're natural, and they run around in the wild, and they'll hang out. And when the temperatures get down in 45 degrees, they start falling out of the trees. It's the weirdest thing in the world. Florida is like Jumanji at times, man. You just got to keep that in mind. So be aware, understand what you're getting yourself into. If you're gonna move out to the wetlands, you're gonna move out to the Everglades, know that that's what you're gonna be dealing with. If you're gonna get more close to the coast, you're gonna have a different set of things you're gonna have to deal with, right? Are you going to go out in the ocean? Remember who lives out there. That's not our world, that's their world, right? There are sharks out there, right? There are stingrays out there. There are things, jellyfish. There's all kinds of stuff that we have to deal with. So just know that Florida has its own set of challenges like a lot of areas do. For us, the way that we approach this is like, we don't go on any lakes in Florida. If I can't see the bottom, I ain't getting in there. I'm just assuming there is an alligator in there. period. It's the safest way to approach that. I don't walk near a freshwater coastline. I make sure that I'm far enough away from that. I don't want to have any surprises of something jumping out of there, right? When it comes to the ocean, we stick to the areas where people swim and tend to hang out. Over here in the Gulf, we don't have nearly as many shark situations as they do on the east coast of the state, but I am fully aware that they are in the water there. We see a lot of dolphin, we see a lot of manatee, and we will see rays during the spring season, but we also get to see sea turtles hatch, man. There's a lot of cool stuff in these trades that you make. So is it for you? Is it not? This is really a personal thing. It's going to be completely subjective and what you feel comfortable with. Number 8 on the list is the job market can be really industry specific. And what do I mean by that? We're heavily dominated by industries like healthcare, education, finance, but we've been growing in technology a lot. The amount of cybersecurity jobs that are here in Tampa and tech jobs in general has been growing tremendously. But depending on what industry you're in, salary ranges are all over the place. And again, I've shared with you how all of these people have moved to the state of Florida and have brought their incomes with them, right? They were earning 200 grand when they came here. They got to keep those jobs. A lot of them have. So there's a ton of people working from homes that may be employed from companies that are in California or the Northeast or Chicago or, just different areas. So this has put a lot of pressure on Tampa Bay and Florida in general. So just keep that in mind. So really do your diligence, because what we have found is healthcare tends to pay a little bit lower. Now it depends on what you do. I've heard people say it pays a lot lower. This is really going to depend on your area of expertise. What are you proficient in? Is that highly desirable, right? Finance is another thing. That's driven the area for years, right? Raymond James Stadium, it's been named after finance. We got a lot of banking here. That doesn't seem to be one of those areas where there's a lot of shortcuts in terms of salary. Education is one where I hear that we don't pay as well. Again, take that into account. Also take into account that you're not paying a state income tax. That is going to, or should weigh into your equation, but this is something that you have to really focus on, because depending on what type of work you do, Florida in general may pay less or significantly less, or you might be in a really good position. So this is something that you need to do diligence on. Again, Tampa was ranked the number 4 area for job growth last year, which is awesome. Coming into 2025, we'll see what those rankings are, but we've been growing like crazy. So just keep that in mind. Jobs can be a challenge, pay can be a challenge. It's gonna be industry specific. Number 9 is gonna be the education and school quality concerns. I will just say this as well. Florida is the Wild West when it comes to trying to figure out the quality of schools. When we moved down here, we heard nothing but terrible things about the school systems, the quality of the schools, and in our experience, that has not been the case. Now, I'm going to share a few things with you that you need to understand. First and foremost, okay, there are great resources out there. If you look at all of the real estate portal sites, they'll typically have school rankings in there. That is something to be aware of. Florida is also school of choice. Now, this is something that matters a lot, because if you move somewhere, where we moved from, I'll give you an example. We could only go to the school in our district, and our district was tied to our address. Now, in the state of Florida, you're going to have a school assigned to you based upon your address. That's normal. But if you're a school of choice, you get to take your kids wherever you want. Now, you may not have a public transit system to get them there, meaning that you're gonna have to drive your kids. But we have great charter school options. We have STEM schools, right? We have magnet schools. We have some incredible private school systems. And when it comes to public, there are still really, really good public school systems as well too. The thing that we have found is that it's really fragmented. You'll be in specific cities and the elementary school will be amazing, and then the junior high will be okay, and then the high school will be terrible. Or the high school will be amazing, and then the elementary school is not good. It's all over the board. It depends on what city you live in. And the thing that I always tell people is look where real estate values are high, where crime is low, because that usually means that the education system is good. Not always, right? But high real estate values typically come with good education. not always. Now, not everybody can afford those options either, so I want to make sure that I'm being mindful of this. There are communities that I would consider affordable that have really highly rated schools. So just make sure you're doing diligence. One of my favorite hacks is when you're looking at a community, get in their Facebook groups and ask parents their experience. You know how you want to really dig in? Ask the parents. How do you feel about your kids' education? How is it going? The ratings here may not look favorable. They're not great, but what has been your experience? Oh, our kids are doing X. They're doing really well. Yeah, the ratings say this, but in our experience, it's been this. I think that can be a very helpful resource when it comes to doing your diligence when it comes to education. And number 10 on this list is, there's a limited public transportation here in the greater Tampa Bay area. Now, I came from, suburban Metro Detroit, where again, we had basically a bus system and it was very sporadic. So it's actually better here for me than it was back home. But you may be coming from an area like Illinois, like Chicago as an example. You've got the elevated train, right? You might be coming from New York where you've got the subway system. We don't have that kind of stuff anywhere in Tampa. Now they're working on specific things like the high-speed rail, the Bright Line. That's made it from Miami all the way to Orlando, and there is a plan to get that thing here to Tampa. So at some point, we'll be able to hop on a high-speed train and go from Tampa to Miami, but that's not today, right? We do have the streetcar in Tampa, which is awesome, but again, it's pretty limited. It goes down Water Street, it goes down to the Tampa Convention Center, but it's not all over the city. There is Uber, there are bikes you can rent, there is a great bus system here. St. Pete specifically also has a great bus system as well. The Sunrunner will take you from downtown St. Pete over to the beach. We've got the trolley system that runs on the beach. So I think there's a fair amount, but it definitely does not stand up to areas like Chicago or New York as an example. So just keep that in mind. If you're coming here and you think that you're going to be able to walk everywhere you go, you definitely be cautious about there. If you're moving to downtown Tampa and willing to live in a high rise, then you definitely can have that type of lifestyle. Downtown St. Pete can provide that lifestyle, but outside of that, y'all, you're gonna be driving, riding a bike, or Ubering everywhere you need to go. Oh, and golf carts, of course, too, but you can't take those on the highway, so just keep that in mind. And for us, we knew we were gonna be taking a car everywhere we went, so it really wasn't that big of a deal. We like to Uber on date night. If we're gonna have a cocktail or whatever, we'll grab an Uber. It's not, it adds an extra expense, but it just makes your life a lot less complicated. We don't always do that, but it just depends on what we're trying to accomplish. And again, it's not for everybody, I understand, but we came from a lifestyle that we drove everywhere. It was the Motor City where we moved from, so we completely understand that. And I hope that this has helped you today. If you have questions or you are considering relocating to the area, all my contact information is down below. There's even a link to my calendar so you can schedule a time that's most convenient for you. I'm happy to jump on a Zoom call, answer some of these questions, and most importantly, pull up the maps, show you the areas that match your ideal lifestyle and really help you get this dialed in. So do not hesitate to reach out to me and my team. We are here to help. I'm going to put 2 videos up here that also are probably going to help you make a decision about whether Tampa's right for you. And as always, go out and live that Tampa life.